Hi there and welcome to Studio SN. My name is Sara Naumann and today is part 2 of our Christmas card making series here on Studio SN. Merry Christmas! Today I want to show you how to make a quick and easy stamped and embossed snow scene. This is great for Christmas cards or for general winter themed cards. So you can see here I've got my stamped and embossed snowflake background. I've also got some embossing going on here on the torn edge of this piece of cardstock as well. So let's start with that torn edge and I'll show you how easy this is to do. So I'm starting with a piece of kind of a pewter gray cardstock, and this is a smooth matte cardstock. And when I tear it, I think you'll be able to see straight away that it has a white core. And as I'm tearing this, that white core will be revealed on one side. The other side will not have it on the front. Of course, if you flip this over, then you'll have it on the reverse. So I want to take advantage of that white core because it's going to give me some extra texture and dimension on my embossing. So before I get out my embossing tools, I'm going to bring in a piece of scrap paper. And this is what I'm going to use just to catch the excess bits of my embossing powder. So the embossing powder I'm using is from Wow Embossing. This is the opaque bright white superfine. And I also need my embossing ink pad. And in this case, I'm using the Top Boss from Clear Snap. This is tinted, and this is going to be more important when I get to stamping my snowflakes, but it is also going to help with this process too. Now, because it's tinted, as I'm applying this, I can see exactly where I'm getting that ink. I want it to be on the edge, but I also want it to be on the white portion, and I want some of the ink to even go on the gray. So I can see exactly where I'm putting this. I'm going to hold this over my scrap paper and take my embossing powder and just sprinkle that right on there. And then tap off any excess right into that piece of scrap paper. Now you can see where I've got some embossing powder on here, and I can kind of scuffle this with my finger a little bit to make sure I get exactly the look that I want. Tap off any extra. I'm going to put this piece over to the side so that I can funnel my embossing powder back into the jar, because I'm going to need that in another second. So then I need to make sure I've got my lid back on my jar of embossing powder and move in my piece of cardstock. Want to be working on a heat-resistant surface like a craft sheet, and then just simply take that embossing tool and heat set. So I'm just moving this slowly across here. And as I do so, you can see that embossing powder is starting to turn white, bright white, and shiny. And so this is going to give me not only that beautiful pewter color of the cardstock, I also get that really interesting torn matte cardstock edge there, and then I get this embossing powder. So I'm getting a lot of texture really quickly and pretty easily on here too. Now, as I'm embossing this, it's getting very, very hot, which is why it's important to work on the craft sheet or something similar. But it also means that I need to handle it pretty carefully. And when I lift this up, I want to make sure not to touch any of the torn edge on there, because that is still going to be really hot. So while this cools, then I can work on the other section of my card. And that's going to be using this blue cardstock. So let me bring back in the card. So just as a reminder, I've got these snowflakes going on here. The snowflakes are from a stamp set from Hot Off the Press. This is the Christmas collection. And I want this big snowflake here and then the smaller one here too. They're clear acrylic stamps, which means that they just cling right onto a clear acrylic block. And once again, I'm going to bring in my embossing ink and bring back my opaque bright white superfine embossing powder. Now, because I want some of those snowflakes to go off the sides of my cardstock, I'm just going to put a scrap piece back underneath here so that I can stamp off the sides. This is where my tinted embossing ink is going to be very important, because as I'm stamping this, I can see where I'm positioning this. And this is really nice if you're doing lots of elements on one piece. So then that way, when I come back in here with my small stamp, that I'm not overlapping things. So I can come back in here and add as many more as I want to, because I can see where I'm going. That really does help. And then once I have all of my snowflakes on here, and I think you can see some of them, but you will definitely see them when I get my embossing powder on here. So once again, putting this into a scrap piece of paper and then just sprinkling on that embossing powder, and you kind of slide it off, tap it off, and you can see where those beautiful snowflakes are. So once again, I'm going to set this aside and use my scrap paper to funnel this back into the jar, so absolutely nothing goes to waste. Okay, so now I've got this portion done, and I would go ahead and heat set this as before. Once I do that, I will have a piece that looks something like this, and then I can also take my torn edge and put it down onto the front of it so that I've got a nice overlapping on here as well. Now for both of these, I would go ahead and trim off that blue portion there too. For both of these, I've put them up onto purple cardstock, really sets off that blue nicely, and then I've put it up onto a green card. Now the card is actually a white card, which I've covered just the front panel with green cardstock. I like doing that rather than folding a card from green cardstock because I like to have the white on the inside for writing on or decorating. And then I just need to layer these elements up together. Now one thing I can point out too, let me bring back in my original card. You can see before I put all of those elements up onto my green card base, I wrapped just these layers with some hemp twine, wrapped around that twice, and then put it down onto the front of my card. Now this embellishment on here is also from the Christmas collection stamp set, and this is the Joy to All stamp. So I've stamped that on black and then cut out the piece so that I can have that popped up on foam tape. When you're cutting out something and that's not really that intricate, but something that is a little more intricate, I always like to use a pair of short blade scissors that can really get into those edges there. So I've done that up on foam tape. This is up on a 1 1/4 inch circle punch. That's up on foam tape, and then I have a little bow tied in that hemp twine as well, just as an accent piece. Pretty quick, pretty easy to do, and great for not only Christmas cards, but also winter themed cards as well. I hope you enjoyed today's show. For more ideas and inspiration, please stop by my website at saranaumann.com. If you enjoyed today's video, I invite you to subscribe to Studio SN on YouTube, and I'll keep you updated with a new video every Wednesday. Thank you for joining me on Studio SN, and I will see you again next time.